Before we start this webinar, we would like to request everyone to please stand and pause for a while for the singing of the national anthem of Indonesia and Philippines, and to be followed by the doxology in Islam and Christian.
Indonesia tanah air, tanah tumpah darah. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi pandu hidup. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah air. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya, untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Ini semoga namanya relevan.
Doa sebelum belajar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi zidni ilman warzuqni fahma. Artinya, ya Allah, tambahkanlah aku ilmu dan berikanlah aku rizki akan kepahaman.
Thank you so much. You may take your seats. To officially open this webinar, may we request Dr. Lili Nurlaili, the Education and Culture Attaché of the Embassy of Republic of Indonesia, to give us her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mbak Manet. Good morning, everybody. Selamat pagi, magandang umaga. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My Honorable Professor Jona Carla from PUP, Polytechnic University of Philippines. My Honorable Dr. Sari Ajarin from Pangasinan University. My Honorable Dr. Titi Kristiani from University Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta. And my Honorable yang saya hormati Dr. Ipah Sarifah from University of Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia di Bandung. Thank you, and then terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya untuk semua partisipan. Sampai saat ini ada lebih dari 111 orang yang hadir, dan mudah-mudahan pertemuan hari ini, I hope this webinar international, and then this the last webinar for this month, because from the May, June, and July, every day I'm making a webinar, not only for education, but for nursing, and then several activity. For example, I'm making a virtual nursing course. Terima kasih untuk semuanya, and today is about psychological aspect, effect to student, teacher, and lecturer during pandemic COVID. Dengan mengucapkan bismillah, saya buka acara webinar internasional hari ini. Terima kasih. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Ibu Lili Nurlaili. And now our webinar with the theme Psychological Effect to Student, Teacher, and Lecturer during Pandemic COVID-19 is officially open. We would like again to welcome to all the participants from Indonesia and Philippines. We have teachers from Pangasinan State University or lecturer, and we also have from Polytechnic University of the Philippines, and also we have some teachers from different parts in Metro Manila. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. And now, without further ado, to our keynote speaker, may we request again Dr. Lili Nurlaili to start her presentation.
Thank you, Mbak Manet. Thank you all of the speaker and participant. This is just only brief information about the psychological aspect for student while they are studying at home. Make the child happy while studying at home. There are three psychological effect for a person, namely, first is crisis. For the effect of the crisis is marked by coming urgently without preparation and has a pressing negative effect. Number two is uncertainty. It is generally felt by someone with concern when this condition will end, when they can return to work in an office or meet many people or relatives again. Loss of control is we can see that the death rate continue to rise, but it cannot do anything. That is because of the pandemic. COVID-19 doesn't only attack physical health, but also attack psychological health. This situation makes individuals feel disturbed psychological health, such as anxiety, fear, excessive worry, and other psychosomatic impact. This is also experienced by students who already look bored. In addition to learning difficulties, mental health disorder will also greatly affect the psychological state of students, where the current situation requires students to be aware of the environment in which they live every day. This condition causes mental health disorder. One of it is psychological disorder. Anxiety, panic, and fear are the main causes of disorder jogging in the human body. The suggestion that is built in the mind is very influential of the psychological condition in this situation. Psychomatic will arise when someone feels stress and excessive anxiety, and anxiety can even cause depression. Pajajaran University research result about the psychological impact on children. The results showed a difference in the profile of academic adjustment ability of junior high school respondent with high school and student group. According to high school and student group respondent, as long as the instructions are clear, they know what to do and support academic abilities. The SMP or junior education junior group has a series of factor driving adjustment, ranging from the presence or absence of clear guidelines, the availability of infrastructure, to the level of workload. In addition, psychologically, junior high school children are still in transition between the transition from basic learning to secondary level. Respondents said they were worried, bored, felt they would lose their ability to master the material, and felt they would need a vacation if the implementation of distance learning, or we call that PJJ, was extended. The need to optimize the role of the guidance counseling teachers. Guidance counseling teacher acts as a friend of student during this new normal. In the past, the guidance and counseling teacher only had to take care of students at school. Of course, at this time, the function was different. But until now, according to him, this function has not been implemented. Electronic media, mass media, and social media about the COVID-19 virus can have a psychological impact on children. For example, if they cannot filter the news they receive, it is possible that the child will experience stress and mood swings are volatile. Some behaviors that appear to be usually sudden anger, anxiety, and fear. Excessive anxiety will cause some children to suspect others, start ignoring family members at home, to refuse to interact with neighbors. If this continues and is left unchecked, the child will feel safe and happy to be in his room alone, with worrying about meeting other people. Provide support for education and positive and sustainable activities so that children do not get bored while at home. Online learning from the positive side. Example, online learning process indirectly making closeness between parents and children more intense, so that with these parents can find out firsthand how their child personality. Parents will better understand the condition of children for 24 hours and can know firsthand the personality of their children like what, so that closeness can be more intense. Technological insight from parents who were not yet tech savvy now begin to understand little by little. Online learning from the negative side, for example, during study at home, this also affect the emotional situation of children, especially for children who are still heading to maturity. If at school they can form a personality and experience, but since at home they feel convinced and difficult to express. So this also affect the emotional child when the process toward maturity. The way out is communicating with children intensively is a solution so that children remain active during the online learning process. UNICEF has summarized ways to maintain mental health in a pandemic situation. Here are the things that can be done. First is create online learning routine. As a result of government policies that appeal for self-isolation at home, teachers can no longer teach face-to-face, so change the process of teaching and learning activities online. There are several alternative platforms that can help distance learning, such as Google Classroom, Zoom, free Ruang Guru online school. Number 2 is discuss COVID-19 issue with student. News in the media doesn't stop discussing the issue of COVID-19. You can also do it with student. But of course, here and you student must focus and sort out only the factual and positive thing, so as not to feel excessive anxiety. If students feel worried or afraid, make sure that you are always there for them at this time. Number 3, take a break or do a hobby. When social distancing, activities in the house become limited so that it can cause stress. When not teaching, take the opportunity to take a break or do something you like or hobby. Too easy to burden on your mind. For example, by cooking, reading a book, or playing games. Do whatever you can to keep your mind distracted from this pandemic, because you are too often thinking about the coronavirus. It can make you experience excessive fear. Number 4, get reliable information about COVID-19. Many read about the coronavirus outbreak can cause anxiety attack for someone who has an anxiety disorder. Even to your social media or WhatsApp group is endlessly presenting news about this outbreak. Remember, don't just consume all information. Refine again and select news that you think is trustworthy. Choose a news portal that you really know the reputation and validity of. In fact, for a few moments, you can avoid social media if it is felt to cause too much panic. Number 5 is consult mental health. If you feel stressed that you or your student feel is interfering with daily activities, immediately contact a psychologist or counselor. Bearing stress on the mental state can only make things worse. This can lead to psychosomatic illness, which is a condition or disturbances of the minds that affect the body. At time like this, it's important to be able to look after yourself. The health of you and your student come first. For matter of study in assistant, let's try using Ruang Guru Online School for free. Student can take distance learning, live teaching every Monday until Friday, as in the Ruang Guru application, starting 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. Waktu Indonesia Barat, Indonesian time. The material covers all subjects for all levels. According to the national curriculum, starting from grade 1 elementary school to grade 12 high school, natural and social studies, and vocational high school, which is guided by Ruang Guru Master Teacher. Okay, I think that's enough. Thank you. Maraming selamat. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Ibu Lilina Riley, for the presentation. And now we will proceed to our next speaker. Before the next speaker, we would like to remind and inform everyone, especially our participants, that later, after all the speakers done with their talks and presentation, we will share a link in the chat box for the attendance list and also for your certificate. And also we will share also a link for the presentation, for the e-material, where you can download the presentation of our speakers. So now let's proceed to our next speaker. Our next speaker is, she is Associate Professor in the Polytechnic University of the Philippines and also the Director for the International Linkages, Ms. Jonna Carla Bien.
Good morning to everyone. Salamat pagi, magandang umaga. First of all, I would really like to thank the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia through Dr. Lily Norlaili for giving this opportunity in allowing the Polytechnic University of the Philippines to be part of this very good endeavor in carrying out different webinars that really helps not only the lecturers, but also the students and the different audiences of this particular webinar. The series is really essential in uplifting everybody, particularly during this time of pandemic. So once again, thank you very much. My topic for this morning is about the mental health in the time of COVID-19. This would further discuss on the different psychological effects, not only to the students, but also to the lecturers, and particularly what's going on around us. So before I begin the actual presentation, I would be requesting our audience to please log into www.menti.com and just enter this code 527696. I have shared some question. This is very quick, so please do. Okay, so this is the question. How are you today? I would just like to see some answers coming from you. Okay, this is so nice. 40% says they're feeling great. Others, you're saying just fine. And others are no answer for having a bad day. It's very nice to know this. Okay, so this one good thing. It's nice to hear that you're feeling fine, you're feeling great. That's good. Now let's proceed on with this. It is really essential for us to ask each other once in a while, how are you going? What's happening with your life? Because during this time, since we are under the social quarantine or we are under this kind of pandemic, it's really nice to get in touch with one another. So even though we are far away, we are miles apart from each other, it's really a good thing that we ask, how am I or how are you for doing such kind of thing? The topics for my discussion today would include the following: the introduction about the mental health and the mental health disorders, or the definition of those, the COVID-19 pandemic, pandemics and mental health, the effects of pandemics on mental health, the typical reactions to effects of pandemics, Filipinos and COVID-19, and then the effects of COVID-19. Here we would include its general effects, the COVID-19 in the Filipino setting, coping mechanisms in the academe, and then the new normal. So for the introduction, when we speak of the mental health, the World Health Organization defined it as a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively and is able to make a contribution to his or her society. As what we could see here, there are different things or there are different descriptions that would describe the mental health. Apart from those, in contrast with the mental health, we could see here that when we speak of the mental disorders, this would now involve the disturbances to a person's mental health, often characterized by some combination of troubled thoughts, emotions, behavior, and relationships with others. And since the COVID-19 pandemic is something which had been a great surprise, not only to the Filipinos, to the Indonesians, but also to the rest of the world, this could have given us a lot of uncertainties, a lot of troubles as we face and as we deal with life. As you could see here, with regards to the mental health and well-being, it is being maintained by the different aspects. First, we could see here the individual attributes. For the individual attributes that makes up the genetic and the biological characteristics of a person, this also includes our emotional intelligence, but it's not solely related or relying on the individual attributes, but it involves environmental factors at the same time. Like, for example, how do we access to our basic amenities or the services? This would also involve our cultural beliefs, our attitudes, as well as our practices in life. And then the mental health and the well-being is also greatly affected by social circumstances, like the socio-economic status of the household, the living, the educational status, the working conditions, and opportunities. These three would be a great factor for the development or the condition of the mental health and the well-being of an individual. So, what about the COVID-19? COVID-19 as a pandemic, the World Health Organization defines a pandemic as the worldwide spread of a new disease into which it considers the following. The first, the number of lives lost in a pandemic. It depends on the following circumstances at the same time. First is how many people are infected, how severe of an illness the virus causes, how vulnerable certain groups of people are, the prevention efforts, and how effective they are. If we could just analyze our situation nowadays, particularly here in the Philippines, the spread or the cases of the virus is increasing. It's really sad that it really rises, particularly here in the National Capital Region. And then there are lives, there are reports that lives have lost because it is one of the causes of death. And the transmission is quick. That is why we are all advised to have the safety precautionary measures. And then, the World Health Organization declared COVID 19 to be a pandemic when it became clear that the illness was severe and it was spreading quickly over a wide area. Not only in one country, but you could see that it has transferred from place to place, and most of the countries have been infected by this. And it is an infectious disease caused by a new strain of coronavirus and was unknown before the outbreak began in Wuhan, China in December 2019. Now, pandemic and the mental health. Since this time is somehow a different thing that we have encountered. Maybe some people would say this is the first time in their entire life that they have experienced such thing. And as experiencing such thing, it had given a lot effects on themselves. Now, before I proceed further, I just want to know a little bit of thing about what causes the stressors in your life. By this time, I would also request again, please log into menti.com. I had assigned a question here and enter the code 909734. This is just quick before I continue on with the stresses of the pandemic. I'll wait for a while. So in the question there, I was asking a while ago, what are the causes of your stress? It could be finances, it could be your health status, it could be related to your job or employment, or it could be related to your income. Before we address on with those things, let's proceed on this, this stress that the pandemic is causing. As we could see here, a pandemic can be very stressful, and everyone reacts differently to stressful conditions. We could see that an individual could be having a good coping mechanism, but others could be having some problems, or others are not able to manage it. And Here are some of the manifestations or signs or the symptoms that a person who is stressed is experiencing. Or you might ask yourself, am I experiencing this lately? Am I encountering these things before? Like, for example, fear and worry. Maybe some of you could be experiencing this. Fear that tomorrow you will be infected. I hope not. The worry that maybe some of your loved ones could be infected at the same time. Another, a change in sleeping pattern. Oh, who among you here have difficulty of sleeping? Maybe you could be thinking about something, that's why you're not able to fall asleep, or because some people got used in a different situation in their life, that's why it keeps them awake, or there is a difficulty of falling asleep although they really try to sleep. Then a change in eating pattern. So this could be in the case of overeating, or others do not have appetite for eating. That's why they do not eat. So that could be also a reaction to stress. Another, difficulty concentrating. You might be seeing yourself jumping from one task to another, that you could not focus, you could not concentrate, your attention span is becoming shorter, and you really couldn't focus on the things that you are doing. This could also be one of the symptoms. Another, for others who are currently having some mental health issues, like they know they have anxiety, they know that they are depressed, and because of the pressing conditions that we are having, they might be having this kind of worsening mental health condition. And for others, especially for some of the elderly, the immunocompromised, for those who are having some diseases or existing disorders, because of the stress, it could lead to the worsening of their chronic health problems. Aside from this, the impact of pandemics to the mental health, it could be causing anxiety and stress disorders. It could also have this societal impact, the xenophobia and the social stigma. Or like, for example, whether we admit it or not, for some people, I'm not saying all, for some people, whenever they hear a certain nationality, like for example, they hear, oh, that person is a Chinese. And since they have heard that it originated from China, the coronavirus originated from China, they might be saying, oh, that person could be infected and we have to stay away from them. And that could cause a serious effect on the mental health of the person who is being isolated from the community. Also, medical mistrust and conspiracies could develop. Why? In some areas wherein they do not hear the real news, they hear fake news, and what is being spread is not true. For other people, they tend to believe it, and they tend to increase their worry and their fear. That's why we have to be responsible in sharing news in our social media, in the text messages or in the chat messages that we are sharing to our friends, to our students, because with those things, as we go along with them, they could have a quick retention on the mind of the people, which could aggravate the stress that they are currently feeling. Next, here are some typical reactions to the effects of pandemic. Anxiety, fear, and worry with regards to the following. Like what I have mentioned, one's own health and others' health status. People are not so selfish. We do not just think, I am sick. What happens to me if I am sick? I know that it's not just the thinking, but what people think is about, if I get sick, what about my family members at home? What about the people I have mingled with in the office or in the school? I might be the carrier of the disease, or I might be transferring it to them without me knowing it. And that causes stress. Another, feeling of resentment for having to go to quarantine. We are advised that whenever we feel that we are sick, We have to do isolation and we have to undergo quarantine. When you feel symptoms in your body, when you feel headache, when you feel that your temperature is slightly increasing, when you feel that you're having a sore throat, even if it's not COVID related, what comes into your mind? You might be thinking, oh, I might be sick, I might be dying. How many days should I last? Right? And that is something which is very stressful to us. Another, the experience of monitoring self or others following symptoms of the disease. That follows it. You always keep on checking your temperature and then you're saying, I do not have fever, but I feel hot. I do not have a sore throat, but I have difficulty swallowing the food. I do not have any muscle pain, but I feel weak. And that keeps you to assess if you are sick or not. Another, the time of work, potential job loss. In the Philippine setting, it's really true that many companies, private companies or institutions have closed or have laid off their employees. And it's really a challenge for those Filipinos who were laid off from their jobs. Considering this pandemic, where will they get money? What would be the source of income? How will they be sustaining the needs of their family? And that adds on to the stress of the people. Another is the challenge of securing necessities. If you do not have enough funds or resources, then how are you going to get it? And concerned about caring for children or the elderly. When I get sick, how do I take care of my children? Who's going to take good care of them? And as we all know, if you get infected with COVID and when you are in the hospital, you couldn't be visited by your relatives. And the worst case, when an individual dies, automatically that person is cremated and you feel that you were not being able to see that person, somebody that you value, somebody that you love, even in the last breath of his life. And that adds on to the stress. Even you do not actually face that situation, when you think about that, that is something that would scare you away. Another, uncertainty or frustration about the situation in the future. Well, really, there is uncertainty. Things are never certain. We know that things are never certain, but this time it really showed us that there is uncertainty. Who knows when will this end? Who knows how are we going to flatten the curve? Who knows when the vaccine is created, or if the vaccine is created, will it really be effective in controlling the spread of the virus to the body of the person and transmitting it to others? Another, of course, so with all those things that we are facing, some people may feel lonely, particularly for those who are also suffering from imbalances in their hormones. That could also add on to the feeling of loneliness that individual faces. Another, anger towards negligence, anger towards others' negligence. Or like, for example, you know for yourself that when you go out, you wear mask, you wear face shield, you use alcohol, you wash your hands very well. However, when you go out, you see people just chatting around without wearing any mask or any protective thing in their body. So you might be thinking, I'm taking care of myself. However, others are not. What if that people transfer the virus to me? Then that could be a problem at the same time. I've also mentioned about boredom for some people, especially the youths, the children, because they are used in going to different places, going to malls, going a nightlife, mingling with their friends, partying. And since social gathering is not advisable at this time, then they are being stopped from doing such a thing. And that could cause boredom on their part, especially for the travelers who would like to visit different places, right? Going to Indonesia, it's such a beautiful place to explore. For others, going to the Philippines, going to beaches, Boracay, Palawan, and so on, and going to other parts of the world. You might be thinking anywhere I go, there is COVID. And the difficulty is that when you go to the airport, flights are not really sure if they will be going. At the same time, when you get back here, you will be undergoing a quarantine, right? So that's another problem. So might as well you stay at home, or the risk of being infected or getting infected could be increased. Now, so, as a mechanism for controlling the COVID 19, we do these ways: the social distancing, the quarantine, and the isolation. So, social distancing, a way to keep people from interacting closely or frequently enough to spread an infectious disease. On the other hand, the quarantine separates and restricts the movement of people who have been exposed to a contagious disease long enough to see if they become sick. As we all know, there is an incubation of 14 days, and other researchers would say it could be increasing to more than 14 days, depending on the severity of the virus. And isolation, separating sick people from those who are not, to prevent the spread of the disease. All these things that we are doing also has an impact on our mental health. We'll see on about it later. So in the Philippine setting, as we could see here, the Philippines and the COVID-19. Here are some people, although they are wearing masks, you could see that the scenario sometimes doesn't observe the proper distancing. It's a sad thing. So take a look. Here are some people who are trying to wait for their flight or trying to wait for a bus or a ride that would bring them back to their provinces. Here, picture of a person getting some or carrying some goods or relief goods given by our government. And you could see here a father and a child. The other one is wearing a mask, the other one is not. And we say that hygiene is very important at this point. But the question is, what about the people who will not be able to do such a thing? So here, another challenge. I know you're familiar. In the Philippines, we have a jeepney, and it's one of the transportation system that we do. But during the enhanced community quarantine, the public transportation has been halted, and the jeepney drivers had a difficulty in how are they going to have funds or sources. That's why they're asking here for donation. And here, uh, it's a true reality that many hospitals and COVID centers are declaring that they are almost reaching the maximum capacity. You see here children holding some laptop, sharing, because as we all know nowadays, we had to undergo the online learning. With these different scenarios, a reflection of the true reality, you could see how people would feel more stressful when you are facing such kind of these things. And COVID-19, this was taken a few days ago, 82,000 total cases, but I think it's more than 82,000 this time. Now, take a look at some of the impact of COVID-19 on Filipinos' mental health. The first is about depression and anxiety. So, with the pressing situations that you might be facing, people, particularly the students, even the teachers, even those working in the academy or in the other sectors, they might be experiencing some feelings of loneliness, pessimism, and experiencing some disruption in their sleeping patterns. Another, some might be saying they are having unmet spiritual needs. What about unmet spiritual needs? Because other people may experience a sense of sadness and yearning because here in the Philippines, every Sunday, that's one of the most important days for the family because normally a Sunday would be a day for family to go to the church together and pray. And after going to the church, after praying, some families opt to go to different places, to travel, to have some bonding. And because of the situation nowadays, of course, we are very much encouraged to stay at home or else you take the risk. And then poor social well-being. They may feel a lack or lessen social support. Lack of social interaction can even lead to long-term stress and decline in emotional well-being. And this may be very evident for those who have less or who do not have access to technology. This is one of the greatest challenge that the education sector could be facing nowadays. Some of the students, particularly those living in the remote areas, could be having a limited or even no access to the technology. Not just technology, but also to the internet connectivity. That's also a problem. Another, decline in physical well-being, mainly due to sedentary lifestyle that quarantine unwittingly encourages. Because for people who usually stay at home, or what do they do? Even they are working, most of the times they are sitting down. Most of the times, some people, they would be on bed. Actually, even if they have meeting, they could be on their bed. They could even mute the microphone. They could even turn off their videos and the meeting just go on. And also, one impact in the worst case is the fear of dying alone. Because here, literally, you will die alone. No hospital visitors, a restriction on traditionally week-long events filled with religious and ceremonial activities, particularly in the Philippines. Because normally, during the time when pandemic wasn't here, when a person dies, usually there is before the funeral or before the actual burying of the dead, it will be having some few days and nights wherein some of the relatives are being waited to see the remains of the dead, and that could take for some days and a week. But during the pandemic, it's no longer allowed. And the body of the dead will automatically be cremated. So that's one of the changes. However, given those things, we could not just let our mental health be lessened or not go into a good situation. More or less, we still have to strive in making our lives better with this. So, in the Philippine setting, we have ongoing support for Filipinos. And this is one good thing that could uplift the people. We have the National Center for Mental Health, which is the Department of Health. The under of the Department of Health, there is a crisis hotline that is free to the public. Non-government organizations and private sectors also offer free telephone and online counseling and consultation. A number is given, and people who are suffering from a certain mental health problems could be calling and could be accessing those. And then also, there is a free telemedicine and consultation services because for some people who are sick, even if it's not because of COVID, you could undergo medical checkup online wherein it's like this. You see your doctor on the screen, the doctor will be asking what are your signs and symptoms, or what do you feel, why do you need the consultation, and also, there is a conduct of citywide disinfection and giving of ayuda. Ayuda would be the help, the assistance. It could be in a form of relief goods being distributed and being given to Filipinos. Now, for the COVID-19 and the students, the children are also likely to experience worry, anxiety, and fear. They are typically afraid of dying, of their dying relatives, and the fear of getting infected. And if the schools close, they may lose a sense of structure and stimulation for the environment. Whether we admit it or not, some of the students consider their schools as their home because they are at ease. Some could be at ease with their classmates, or some could find comfort with their teachers, and others could be consulting some guidance counselors, and it gives them a sense of peace. And if they are not going to school because it is not allowed this time, then that could add to the stress that the student could be facing. There could be also lesser opportunities with classmates and teachers, and there could be less social support, like what I have mentioned. This social support is very good for our mental health. So same thing goes with the teachers. The teachers also experience worry, anxiety, and fear. But in a different case or in a different situation this time, I know some of the stressors for the teachers could be they want to hit a certain deadline that is allotted to them, too many workloads, preparation of modules, preparation of instructional materials. I know that that could be a stressor to the teacher. For others, especially who are not very much techy or whom are not very much into the use of these online teaching platforms, they could feel anxiety whenever they will be using it. Would I be able to make it? Would I be able to enter the meeting room? Would I be able to accept my students? Would I be able to share screen? So that could be one of the problem at the same time. Another that could cause worry when you are under the online teaching or whenever you are under the meeting and your internet connection suddenly stops, your connection suddenly goes down, then that's another problem that could cause this. Another, so for our students, heightened level of psychological distress due to restricted social connections. There could be also impaired cognitive skills due to chronic stress, like what we have mentioned earlier. Deficits ability to regulate emotions in adaptive ways. Of course, if you are always sad, if you are feeling depressed, how could you make sound judgment? How could you make sound decisions? Exacerbated academic stressors, increased pressures to learn independently. Because as we all know, it's a good thing that we still get in touch with the use of technology. However, the loss of the physical touch or the physical communication with the teachers as well as the students is really challenging at the same time. For the teachers, one challenge that we face inside a normal classroom before the pandemic is some of our students do not have a very good attention span when we were delivering our lectures. In this case, it's not so easy to monitor if our students are really engaged when we are having our discussions. Another, it's a challenge for the students because sometimes because to some factors such as lack of or a poor quality of internet connection, they might not be able to hear clearly what the teacher is discussing or some of the links which are being shared or which are being opened. It could be a challenge another on the part of the students. Another is economic effects, the impacts in the daily academic life of the students. Although they are not going to school, others might be saying, my funds is not sufficient in getting a load or a data to provide for my lesson. Another could be negative academic consequences. It's really a high possibility of reduced motivation towards studies. It could be also abandonment of daily routines, widening of achievement gap, particularly in the case of remote learning, and there could be, we consider the possibility of higher rates of dropouts. So I'll just show a news coming from here in the Philippines. A Filipino boy kills himself over online learning. And his reason was he hanged himself after worrying his family would not be able to afford electronic equipment required for him to study online in the coming academic year. So this is really a sad news to hear because as such young mind, you could see how that person had experienced high level of anxiety and stress, depression that pushed him to do such kind of thing. So the work from home setup, according to a psychiatrist, the Filipino psychiatrist, Dr. Randy Del Llosa, some teachers or workers cannot distinguish the boundary between working at home and being at home. Well, sometimes this is true because me personally, I also experienced this. In the normal setting, when you go to the office, usually 8 o'clock in the morning, and normally you go home. For others, it's 5 o'clock. For others, it's 8 o'clock. Then you do things. When you're in the office, particularly, you will work about your job. But in the work from home setup, sometimes that particular task, you keep out in mind that you are going beyond your schedule. You even do more. Sometimes you're not able to finish task. So what do? Almost 24 hours you are in the front of your computer. You are using your mobile phones. You are monitoring some things. Apart from that, sometimes you couldn't distinguish the boundary between working at home and being at home. And when boundaries are crossed, stress builds up and may lead to loss of motivation, anxiety, and depression. And some symptoms of employees who continue to experience stress would include tardiness, lack of focus, missed deadlines, and never ending fatigue. Sometimes the physical manifestations in our body are caused of the highly stressful condition that we are facing. So, coping mechanisms in the academe, of course, it's not only the dark side that we have to face, we have to address and give issues in order to resolve things. So, the blended learning scheme was developed as there are no signs of recovering from pandemic soon, anchored in technology as medium of instruction, like what we do right now. We have different school platforms. We have the Google Classroom, the Google Meet. We could utilize Zoom, the WebEx, Schoology, Moodle, and many other things. And modules delivered to students through online classrooms at the same time. So here in the Philippines, for the Commission on Higher Education, SHED contact center, wherein while our country is under state of calamity due to COVID, the students, faculty, and other higher education stakeholders may reach SHED through the following. It could be through Facebook, it could be through Twitter, it could be text or email. And also, there is at SHED Memorandum Order Number 1 Series of 2020, the guidelines for grant of assistance to state youth and colleges to combat COVID-19. And here are some of the, and this is their link to check on for more details. And for some cities in the Philippines, like for example, Manila, Pasig, there is an aid for the students and the teachers, wherein laptop, pocket Wi-Fi, and tablets with SIM card with 10 gigabyte of data monthly would be distributed to the students. And somehow it would relieve people's mind, how are they going to carry out this online learning. And also, there is Donate Your Pre-Loved Gadgets Today, wherein there is a 2KK gadget drive wherein the students are helped to continue their education. And also for private schools, I guess. And one of the mayors have mentioned, don't give up school, just enroll. You won't have to spend extra. As this Mayor Soto urges students as schools shift to distance learning amid coronavirus pandemic. Now, I would like to share how our university, the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, responds to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think this is also done with other universities. So we have the PUP counseling services, wherein the students, the faculty members, employees could encounter or could avail of the counseling services. Also, we have the drive to give some goods to our nearby communities. Also, first we give to the students who were stuck in their dormitories, who were not able to go home because of the announcement of the quarantine, and also for other employees and faculty members. At the same time, the PUP was able to produce its own ethyl alcohol and it's ready for mass production. And it was distributed not only to the school community but also to the barangays nearby. And through this sense, more or less, even though we encounter those difficulties or the different manifestations of stresses that I have mentioned, more or less, it could lighten the ambience and the feeling of tension in order to be able to have at least a balanced mental health. Also, for the academic setup, we have the flex still, since face to face would be very limited or is discouraged. We'll be doing online synchronous, asynchronous learning and digital off-grid, wherein a module will be printed since the faculty members really did their efforts in doing the instructional materials. It will be delivered to those students. Of course, there will be a thorough selection for this. The instructional materials will be delivered to the students who would not really be able to carry out through the online learning if they do not have a good access on it. Okay. Now, for this, can you please go to menti.com and have this code 391293? Just answer the simple question. Just a keyword. In English, please. Write a word or phrase that you have remembered based on the discussion. So just quick. Three nine one two nine three. Okay. One have mentioned about the mental. Okay. Are there other responses? So just a word or a phrase that you have retained as far as the discussion has been going on lately. Okay, so that's a good thing. I'll open this tab again later on. Let's proceed on the coping mechanisms in the academe in preparation for the new learning. So, as we go along with this, teachers could be focusing on relationship first. Remember earlier, we have asked each other, how are you going on or how are you feeling? When we start our classes, it's really important to ask our students, how are you? And give a smile on your face. Why? As they see that somebody is concerned about them, somebody even ask, how are they? The students would feel a bit happier. That's sure. Even for us personally, when somebody asks you, how are you? And you know that that is a sincere question, you might be touched. You might be feeling, oh, this person has a concern over me. I feel important. You might be feeling important. Not just focusing our lesson for today is about this and this. Remember, learning would be effective if you get to have the heart, the feeling that your students are encountering. Strength and diagnostic testings, assessments that you are given, like quizzes, like activities. You should consider, when are you going to give this test? And the result of the test would be what? What's going to happen? If the students doesn't get it, what is your response to that? Are you going to rediscuss your topics? Are you going to make it slow for a little bit? Are you going to make use of other supplementary learning materials? Another would be differentiate instructions, particularly for vulnerable students. It's very important that before we do any activity, instructions are clear. Instructions are clear, expectations are set, and at the same time, our students are capable and ready of what you are instructing or telling them to do. Now, for the new normal, how to cope or how to improve our mental health. First, know what to do if you were sick and concerned about COVID-19. Of course, I know everybody is very much aware of what they are experiencing or what are the signs and symptoms of COVID-19. Now, if you think that you're having the symptoms, then what you should be doing? Another, know where and how to get treatment. Another, it's really essential to take care of your emotional health. How are you going to take care of your emotional health? One mechanism could be breaks from media consumption. Take breaks from media consumption. How is that? When you're always watching the news, it's important that you take a break from it. Take a break from it and later on you just continue on being productive. Maybe you could say in the morning or not in the morning, at night, before you sleep, or at the same time, you could be thinking, what time of the day is best for me to listen to this? What could not be causing high anxiety on my part? Okay? So that could be one thing. Most importantly, we have to take care of our body. Practice good hygiene, exercise. So this is one essential thing because mostly are staying at home. It's really important that you make yourself, your physical body still active to prevent having more diseases. So after getting up, what do we usually do? Before doing others, if you have time to exercise, then do it. Even simple breathing exercises, even simple body parts bending, yoga, or something that could make you sweat. This could be a good thing. Another is through meditation, sometimes clearing our minds from those unwanted things. Sleep is important. Why? Not only for our mental health, but sleep is good for the regeneration of our cells and for the strengthening of our immune system. But the challenge could be when you are having difficulty of sleeping, when you are having a disturbed sleeping pattern, then that could really lower your immune system. Then avoid excessive alcohol for some who are really drinkers and find time to unwind. But I'm not just suggesting you go to the places that you always visit before. No, you have to maximize your resources since we are encouraged to stay at home. What are the things that you could do to make yourself feel relaxed and comfortable? Others could be listening to relaxing music. Others could be doing coloring materials. Others could be painting. It's time to unleash your talents this time. You could do cooking, not just cooking, but the food, the designing of the food as you set it up on the table. Another could be, since we are using our computers, then you might be doing some animations, you might be watching videos, which makes you feel relieved and makes you feel relaxed. That's also a good thing. And connect with others virtually once in a while. For example, for others who were not able to be with their close family members or who were not with their family members during the pandemic, connect with them through your phones, connect with them through your laptops. Let's use the gadgets that we have in order to make them feel that you are there and you are with them. Okay? So, with that discussion, I would like to leave you with this quote: where you are now is not where you will always be. There will always be brighter days ahead. So, terima kasih. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat. I hope I was able to share good insights.
Thank you so much, Miss Jana Carla, for your presentation. And we have some questions, but for the questions, we will discuss the question after all the speakers. And now we will proceed to our next speaker. For our next speaker, she is a faculty member from Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, or Education University of Indonesia, Education University of Indonesia, Dr. Ipa Sarifa. Kepada Ibu, to Ibu, you may start your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Manet Gonzalez. Saya minta tolong untuk ini kan PowerPoint-nya ya.
Ya, Ibu. Kami akan upload dari sini.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity and maraming salamat. First of all, I would like to thanks to Her Excellency Dr. Lili Nurlaili, MED, as the Education and Culture Attaché, Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia, Manila, Philippines. The honorable guest speakers, Associate Professor Jona Karlabian, Dr. Sali Jarin, and Dr. Titi Kristiani, MC, psychologist, and all of the audience I'm proud of. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, selamat pagi, magandang umaga, and peace for all of us. I'm glad on this occasion to be able to meet with the audience, even though virtually through the Zoom room. And we have heard amazing presentation from the previous speakers. So complementing what has been presented by the previous speakers, allow me to share the result of the simple research that I have done under the title Students, Teachers, Lecturers, their psychological condition during pandemic COVID-19. So this is the agenda that we will discuss. First, introduction. Second, psychological condition of students. The third, psychological condition of teachers or lecturers. And the fourth, where do we go from here? And the fifth is the closing. So as an introduction, let's look at the impact of COVID-19 on the teaching and learning process. As we know, COVID-19 pandemic has influenced many aspects of life, including education. For almost 5 months, many schools have been closed or held online learning. And then many changes were experienced by students, teachers, and lecturers. Staying and doing everything from home, then increasingly worrying development of COVID-19 in turns affect the psychological condition of students, teachers, and lecturers. Next slide, please. Correspondingly, the COVID-19 pandemic has also brought a revolution in the educational process, especially learning, which includes methods, research person, learning activities, and evaluation of learning outcomes. In the aspect of learning method, we move from face-to-face method directly or offline towards learning by using the internet or online. In the aspect of research person, learning that was previously dominated by the teacher or lecturer as the main research person is now shifting to making another parent or adult or even ourselves as a research person. Furthermore, in the aspect of learning activities, which were previously limited by time and space, now it seems as borderless and timeless, or even become multitasking learning at one time. And finally, in the aspect of evaluation learning outcomes, evaluation of learning outcomes that have so far tend to be rigorous have shifted towards more flexible evaluation because they adjust to pandemic condition. Next slide. So various changes or revolution in learning that occur eventually also cause many problems. The result of a simple survey I conducted of 210 students respondents showed that there were at least 4 learning problems experienced by students during a pandemic. First, 17% of respondents experienced constraints related to infrastructure or networks. Second, as many as 25% of students have difficulty in managing the time between learning, playing, and personal activities. Third, as many as 28% of respondents felt they didn't get enough feedback and clarity or material clarity from the teacher or lecturers during online learning. And finally, as many as 30% of respondents admit being burdened with appealing tasks or work. So, how do students feel during a pandemic? Next slide, please. In other complex words, what was their psychological condition during the pandemic? Next slide. Here, I tried to give a quiz to students taken from the anxiety test, and as a result, almost all students give check marks to their statements. And the statement starts from they feel overwhelmed with so many tasks and responsibilities, very busy and become impatient, more difficult to work if get closer to a deadline, difficult to stay nimble, resilient, and focus on important work. Their time and energy had been taken too much by worry, procrastinated doing the task to the last limit, lack of sleep, and feel that don't get enough rest when wake up in the morning, and modest assignment and didn't reflect themselves. Two, difficulty to planning and implementing a daily agenda. Furthermore, next slide. When we try to tracing the factor causing students to feel anxiety during a pandemic, at least 4 causes were obtained based on the respondents' acknowledgement. First, they feel anxieties about the impact of the pandemic on the continuity of their studies. Second, they are worried about the impact of the pandemic on their future work. And the third contributing factor is limitation in communication and also the limitation of social distance, while the fourth cause is a concern because of unstable family economic problems. Now we leave for a moment the psychological condition of the students and the causes. Now we will move on to the psychological condition of the teacher or lecturers. Next slide. Also, next slide. Again, based on a simple survey I conducted of 112 teachers and lecturers, an overview was obtained about how they feel. First, teachers or lecturers find it difficult to manage time between making up activities, doing household chores, and taking care of the family. Second, the teacher or lecturers feel tired because they spend a lot of time in front of the screen and check students' assignment. Third, they feel bored because there is no face-to-face activity and direct communication, especially with college. And fourth, they feel anxiety, worry, and fear if a loved family member is infected with the COVID-19 virus. And finally, they felt uncertainty about the teaching and learning process. That is, they do not know this pandemic will last until when and what kind of learning going forward. Next slide, please. So complementing the result of my survey, both to students and teachers or lecturers, I include an explanation from UNESCO about the types of family activities that occur during learning disruption during a pandemic. So we see that according to UNESCO, there are 3 types of family activities that are common during the pandemics, namely family living, including eating, sleeping, sporting, then family entertainment, including watching TV, gaming, and playing with mobile devices, and family learning, which consists of studying, reading, and family chatting. We can see the combination at the slide 12. And the next slide, when the 3 types of activities were asked randomly From the respondents, the majority of them admitted that their families did more family living and family entertainment, but only a few did family learning. Furthermore, I tried to ask about the needs felt by the teachers or lecturers during the pandemic, especially those related to mental health during the pandemic. And the result, in line with the problem, they stated that there were at least 5 needs they felt. The first, teacher and lecturers need a distraction or do something that is run away from the routine. And the second, they need a break from the screen. Third, they need socialization even though they are remote. Fourth, they need more regular daily activities. And fifth, they need limits on consuming news and also the need to read more positive and inspiring stories. We see in the slide 14 and the next slide. In short, we can be say that both students and lecturers or teachers experience boredom or burnout, feeling of anxiety, worry, and fear, and to some degree, delay or procrastination in doing their assignment. So, in the fourth part of this discussion, I try to offer an alternative action what needs to be done, both by students and teachers or lecturers in overcoming psychological conditions that are felt during a pandemic, with the title of Where Do We Go From Here? Next slide, please. The first step we can take is to analyze ourselves. Which zones are we in right now? Are we in a fear zones, learning zones, or growth zone? This analysis is important to determine our next step. The fear zone, characterized by lack of self-confidence, find excuses, and be affected by others' opinion. The learning zone, characterized by deal with challenges and problems, acquire new skills, and extend our comfort zones. And the growth zone, characterized by find purposes, live dreams, set new goals, and conquer objectives. So if we are in the fear zones, then we should start moving to the learning zones. Likewise, if we are in the learning zone, we should move towards to the growth zone. And if we are now in the growth zone, then keep it so we feel mentally healthy. And the key to moving between zones while keeping ourselves mentally healthy during a pandemic is to adapt. Next slide, please. I summarize the behavioral adaptation in 5 C's, namely communication, connection, consumption, caring, and community. Adaptation in communication, that is, we force ourselves to become familiar with the virtual or digital world. Adaptation in connection, that is, we stay connected and do work, also study remotely. Adaptation in terms of consumptions implies we need to re-evaluate our priorities so far. Furthermore, adaptation in caring, we are required to think we instead of me. And finally, adaptation in the community, we will voluntarily or force it towards people who have social distance. And now we are going to the end of my conversation, which is the closing part. Next slide, please. Here, I just want to come by closing remarks. Although our expectations are very high, we also need to realize that sometimes we don't have the tools or adequate support to undergo this distant learning without interruption and delay. So remember to be gentle and kind to yourself. Forgive yourself when things when things don't go the way you expect or plan, this is the right time for all to be mutual learners, make mistakes, and be patient with each other because we all adapt, and make mistakes. I think that's all of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And I return the next opportunity to the MC. Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ipa, for your presentation. And now we would like to remind again to our participants, if you would like to ask some questions or clarification regarding the presentation of Dr. Ipa, kindly type it in the Q&A, and please don't forget to write the question if it's for Dr. Ipa or for Miss Jonna Carla. And now we will proceed to our next speaker. Our next speaker, she's also a faculty member from the Pangasinan State University, Dr. Sally A. Jarin. To Dr. Sally, you may start your presentation.
Tom TV. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Salamat pagi to my friends in Indonesia, and magandang umaga, Pilipinas. I'm hoping you are at your best. Please be with me and do apply the 3 Ps. I often apply this every time I'm doing things or I'm into something. The first P is pause. Try doing this most of the time. Learn to stop, breathe, so just be there and stay with me. The second P is process. Everything that is done, you have to rethink and evaluate. Assess yourself. And the last one is the 3P is proceed. Whatever you have learned or you have experienced, just proceed and let it go. Get up. And at the end, you are living life to the fullest. So let me take this opportunity to thank the very dynamic education culture attaché, Embassy of Republic of Indonesia, Manila, Honorable Dr. Lily Norlaili, for inviting me to share with you my topic entitled Student and Teachers' Mental Health Amidst a Pandemic, the Philippines COVID-19 Experience. So on your screen is the outline of the topic I will be discussing. Okay, so next one. So you have there the topic, you have there the outline, and we are now going to show you an adapted video coming from the Psych Hub YouTube. So please watch this.
I'm sorry, ma'am, there's no sound.
Not alone in how you're feeling right now, and that there are practical, healthy. The current challenge. The current challenges brought about by COVID-19 for people all around the globe are unparalleled and have caused fear, anxiety, and uncertainty for so many of us. We are all going through this together, and it's important to understand that you're not alone in how you're feeling right now, and that there are practical, healthy ways to cope with these emotions. The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented change and a need for a response from everyone around the globe. Many of us are worried about our loved ones and our livelihoods, and there is no one right way to cope with what we're experiencing. Remember, However you're feeling, there are others that feel the same. You are not alone. Here are a few voices of people struggling to cope during this time. Some days I'm okay. I'm doing my best to adjust. But yesterday, I couldn't stop crying. This all just seems so unfair, and I feel so angry that this is happening to us. I'm struggling to care for my kids and work from home at the same time, and I'm worried about my parents' health. I watch the news and it just seems so hopeless. I don't know how to keep it together.
I feel so lost and sad. So much has changed. I used to have dinner every week with my family, but now I can't be in the same room with them. I really miss them.
I'm missing out on my prom and my graduation. I've literally been looking forward to these things my whole life, and I'm heartbroken.
With everything going on now, I just can't stop my thoughts. And physically, my chest hurts, and I can't breathe. I get nauseous thinking about what can happen to my family and my friends.
Before this happened, I used to worry all the time about getting sick. Now that worry has turned into absolute terror. My heart races every time I have to go to the store. What if I bring germs home with me? I can't stop washing my hands.
No matter how exhausted I am, my sleep is still terrible. I just keep picturing all the things that could possibly happen. Will I ever get a good night's sleep again?
I've been through so much already. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this too. My flashbacks are getting worse and worse.
Honestly, I feel like I'm more comfortable in times of crisis. I'm not sure why I don't feel as upset as everyone else does right now.
I don't know when or if everything is going to get back to normal. I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. How many people are going to be affected? What does this mean for me and my family?
We've just heard some of the ways people are being affected by the COVID-19 situation.
Okay, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So let us now define mental health. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act.
It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development conducted a survey in 2017 involving 72 countries and consisting of 540,000 students aged from 15 to 16 years. Their data demonstrates that education and academic performance are a significant source of stress to students. Their study concluded that the ongoing stress relating to education has demonstrated negative impact on students' learning capacity, academic performance, education and employment attainment, sleep quality and quantity, physical health, mental health, and substance use outcomes. I believe that mental health is an integral to a student's development. By pushing innovative and inclusive programs, especially to such a time like today, when the COVID-19 pandemic is ravaging the whole world. So for me, there is a need to integrate mental health lesson in the curriculum. 10 months of accumulated sleepless nights and countless cups of coffee can be an hindrance to the development of a well-being of students. Studies show that sleep deprivation can be a factor to numerous health complications, including mental issues like depression and anxiety. Mental health problems are real and are rampant among teenagers and adolescents. They pose just the same threat as any physical health issue, if not worse. In general, people with mental illness are discriminated more in developing countries in Asia compared to Western countries according to the World Health Organization Assessment Instrument for Mental Health System. Psychological symptoms are seen as socially disadvantageous, affecting their work and family life. It seems there is a lack of information regarding mental health and illness in developing countries. In some Asian cultures, the discussion of mental health and illnesses is not socially accepted. In more extreme situations, the discussion of mental health struggles is viewed particularly as disrespectful. This assumes of mental health illness is in the Philippines leads to the continuous intense mental health stigma. Between 17 to 20% of adults experience psychiatric disorder, while 10 to 15% of Filipino children aged 5 to 15 suffer from mental health problems. According to the National Statistics Office, mental health illnesses are the third most common forms of morbidity for Filipinos. As the world grapples with the Philippine health, with the public health emergency and economic crisis from the corona disease itself 2019 or what we call the COVID-19 pandemic, developing countries become the most vulnerable to its profound negative impact. The first COVID-19 case in the Philippines was reported in January 30, 2020, although it was not until over a month later that the country was placed under a state of public health emergency. Subsequently, the country was placed on enhanced quarantine, which is effectively a total lockdown for 2 months to limit movement of people. All local government units are allowed to impose their own version of ECQ, which involves travel restrictions like air travel, sea travel, and land travel. Suspension of non-essential work, prohibition of mass gatherings, and closure of establishments except those providing or manufacturing basic necessities. Some local governments have gone to the extent of imposing curfew and arrest those who violate curfews and lockdowns. The Commission on Higher Education also suspended the classes but advised to deploy available distance learning and alternative modes, but which is not yet realized as of this moment since virtual learning is still new to the educational system in the Philippines. Policies were created to secure the continuity of adherence of the stakeholders, particularly directed to the teachers and the students, to the educational and preventive policies, such as the provision of alternative delivery modes of education and quarantine requirements. This new normal can cause worries to the teachers since they have not been trained for emergency online teaching. In addition, the suspension of classes even in higher education coupled with social isolation and home quarantine can cause anxieties to the teachers. Considering the increase of COVID-19 cases in the Philippines, a research study by Talidog and Toquero 2020 was conducted to find out the possible impact of COVID-19 outbreak to the people, particularly to the teachers, on how they deal with the quarantine period. The study found out that the teachers are not immune to the vulnerabilities due to the COVID-19 since they had to continue teaching immediately after lockdown. However, they look for ways to still communicate to families, colleagues, and a few of their students who are accessible online according to the study. Filipino teachers have discovered a new hobby like gardening and cooking while on current quarantine, since most of them are also spending time with social media to communicate with friends, students, and colleagues, and read news updates regarding COVID-19 since it can heighten their awareness during a crisis to combat anxiety. Likewise, teachers spend more time online since they also practice the virtual learning project aside from communicating through a professional online community with colleagues. They are developed ways to find something purposeful due to the suspension of all national and regional school-related conferences and activity in the country. COVID-19 indeed changed the lives of so many people around the world. It created fear, trauma, depression, and anxiety to people, especially those who lost their loved ones due to the pandemic. In the context of the Philippines, Filipinos, particularly the teachers, are worried about the safety of their loved ones, and even their lifestyle have been affected because of the fears due to the pandemic. Now, I need you to participate and let us try this activity. I'm not sure if you or someone you know is living with mental health problems or experiencing one or more of the following feelings or behaviors can be an early warning sign of a problem. Are you ready? You will see in your screen some situations and please assess yourself, okay? If you are in this situation, you can relate in the situation, just count how many of them bothers you. If not, you can write down similar situations you've been through, and later on, we are going to find out the assessment of our mental health situation. Remember, I will have a separate activity for the teachers and the students, okay? So let me start by posting the early warning signs for students. First, eating or sleeping too much or too little. Do you suffer that, my dear students? Next, pulling away from people and usual activities. Next one, yelling or fighting with family and friends. Next, experiencing severe mood swings that cause problems in relationships. Another one, hearing voices or believing things that are not true. Thinking of harming yourself or others. Inability to perform daily tasks like taking care of your kids or getting to work or to school. Okay? Take it as a note, be very honest in assessing yourself. So just have 1, 2, 3, just count how many of this bothers you. Your answers will not be shown or it will not be asked. Don't worry. Okay? Now let us proceed to the activities for teachers. Okay, here are the early warning signs. First, I have been away from my children for 3 years already or more, and that is not making me a good parent. Okay, next, have been building my status as a coach for years, won contests, and spend money from my own pocket for the sake of the contest. But I woke up one day that I am already replaced, but needed my help to train the one who replaced me, won the contest, and I end up unrecognized. The next one, can stop the competition arising or the system itself. Another one, you have a lot of bosses. Even your coworker acts like one. And another one, the role conflict and a role ambiguity. Okay? So there you have it. We are done. So do you know your numbers already? Now let us now find out your assessment using the chart based on the score you have given yourself. If after assessing yourself and you got a score of 1, then congratulations, for you are still without stress. That's why you have a smiley. Next, if you obtain a score of 2, you may be experiencing mild stress. If 3, you have moderate stress. But if you got a score of 5 or more, oh boy, you may be bound to pay a visit to your doctor or to your psychologist, for you are having extreme stress already. Or apply my 3 Ps, which I introduced to you earlier. I do hope that no one among us here got a score of 5 or more. But if you do, there are ways to manage stress. Let us take a look at a short video regarding some tips on how to manage stress.
Ma'am, there's no sounds again.
Or passing the virus on. Stress. There are a lot of things outside of our control right now, which can be scary. By focusing on the things we can control, we can refuel ourselves and become more grounded and able to focus and cope with all of the things we can't control. One of the most important actions within your control is to follow CDC guidelines to reduce your chance of being exposed or passing the virus on to others. Use social support. No one should go through this alone. There is absolutely no shame in talking about what you're going through with your friends and family, and it's important to be there for others too. Video chat and phone calls are a great way to stay connected. Prioritize self-care. Staying on a regular schedule, exercising, eating a healthy diet, keeping a sleep routine, and taking time to meditate or pray are all important, now more than ever. Be gentle with yourself. During times like this, you will have good days and bad days. Your emotions are most likely heightened at this time. Try not to compare your life to what you see on your friends' social media feeds. There is always more going on behind screens. Helping others can bring joy and gratification. Do what you can to help others, even if it's something as simple as lending an ear or making someone smile. Be kind to the people around you, especially the folks who are still out working, to ensure we all have what we need. If each day feels like an uphill battle, it may help to seek out professional support. To continue helping during this time of social distancing, many mental health providers are using telemental health in their practice. If you can't afford therapy or need to talk to someone right away, you can call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline 24 hours a day at 1-800-273-8255. You are not alone in how you are feeling. There are things you can do and resources you can use to cope during this challenging time. Check out our library for more videos to learn more about mental health, dealing with isolation, and ways to cope. We're all in this together.
Okay. So there you have it.
Crisis and intense stress.
Okay. So as a closing, the
Crisis.
Sustainable Development Goals addresses the root cause of humanitarian emergencies, as poverty, natural disasters, and conflicts often represent critical threats to the health and safety of a community. Emergencies often occur in low and middle income countries. there is substantial experience and evidence on mental health and psychological interventions in an after emergencies which is valuable in the efforts to reach the SDG. Both from a human rights perspective and an economic perspective, it is clear that mental health must be prioritized. If we are to reach the SDGs, we will need to develop the human potential so that more people can contribute to the work and changes needed. To achieve this, increased resilience is central, I should say. Resilience points both towards promoting mental health in communities, families, school, and the workplace. So thank you very much for all the viewers, to all my co-speakers, Dr. Nordali. Thank you so much, and remember, God bless you and me always.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sally, for your presentation. Again, I would like to remind our participants, if you would like to ask some question to Dr. Sally or a question or clarification, kindly type it in the Q&A and please indicate the name of the speaker. And now we will proceed to our next speaker. For our next speaker, she is a faculty member from the Psychology Department of Sanata Dharma University, Dr. Titik Kristiani. To Dr. Titik, you may start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manet Gonzalez. Good morning, everybody. I hope we all in a great situation. Thank you very much for these opportunities to join in this webinar. Especially, I thanks to Dr. Lily Nurlaili for contact me to join to this great webinar. I will screen share. Okay. Okay, I think we have got much presentation material from the previous great speaker, and for the last speaker, I think I'm not going to talk much about what the previous speaker talk about mental health. And I'm going to talk especially about the student psychological dynamic during pandemic COVID-19. I will present my ideas into 7 sections. First, the COVID-19 outbreak, effect of COVID-19 outbreak in educational setting, effect of online learning to student psychological dynamic during pandemic COVID-19, coping with psychological effect of pandemic COVID-19, and the future school and university to manage the crisis. And the last one is conclusion. So we will enter the first point. I think all of the speaker had said about this COVID-19 outbreak. As we all know, the COVID-19 outbreak is an uncertain situation. Till now, we cannot predict when this pandemic will be over. Prolonged lockdown had several adverse impacts on individual well-being. It has make some negative feeling of stress, anxious, upset, frustrated, uncomfortable, and any other negative consequences. This negative feeling has impact on individual mental health. I think all of us had known about this situation. When we pay attention to the anxieties caused by COVID-19 outbreak, the most serious level of response was fear of losing relative and future anxiety. There are some anxiety response to the feeling of nervousness, sadness, and fear of the worst happening to us. The epidemic will also have a significant impact on the economy, on the country and individual, as we know. Because of the outbreak, some families will lose their source of income, and students might feel anxious about how they pay the tuition fee. It's in Indonesia, it happened. The COVID-19 related stressor include economic stressor, effect on daily life, and academic delay. It effect had a great effect on our mental health. So we move on the what effect of COVID-19 in especially in educational setting. In order to prevent greater COVID-19 transmission, government in every countries had made some protocol and regulation. I think Indonesia and Filipina do that, some regulation like lockdown, physical distancing, stay at home, etc. Use mask, and the educational sector had not been immune. Schools are closed, and we have to change delivering material from offline to online immediately, maybe without preparation, preparation. So in fact, switching to online education, working from home has caused the anxiety. This is a psychological and emotional condition from the online learning. The changes in education format had effect to fulfill our 4 basic learning needs. Now, so I will concentrate with 4 basic learning needs. Now, let me see what is the 4 basic learning needs that students have to, the goal of the student. The first is competence, arousal, self-determination, and relatedness. Competent basic need. Competent refer to a person's need to perceive oneself as competent and possess the ability to perform effectively as to realize his or her output as valuable. This concept is related to maybe we all have known about the self-efficacy concept. That if a person is confident in his capabilities and competent to perform a task, he will be motivated to pursue and will take action accordingly. That's the first basic learning need, competence. And the second is arousal. Arousal in psychology is a state of being psychologically attentive and alert, which is controlled by reticular activating system in our brain. To apply arousal in the context of education, it refers to the state that learner engages in an activity, and positive arousal enable continuous effort and participation in learning. Positive arousal may include positive physical environment, affective factor, motivation, attention, and cognitive evaluator. Third, the self-determination. It refers to the organism desire to self-organize experience and behavior and to have activity be considered with one's integrated sense of self. In educational setting, it refers to one desire to have their own learning and autonomy. That is self-determination. The last basic learning need is relatedness, refer to individual desire and need to connect and create a bonding with other people. So we will analyze how students get these four basic learning needs in the online learning. As the demand of the situation, we have to make online learning, and in the same time we have four basic learning needs. So how it will be combined. But before we analyze how these four basic learning in the online learning, let me see what is the effect of online learning to the student, especially psychological dynamic. So we have there are always two contrast side in almost aspect of life, positive and negative side, without exception in educational setting. In online learning, we have positive and negative aspect. I categorize positive aspect of online learning into three domains. There are time, healthy, related to pandemic, and teaching delivery. Online learning had increased time efficiency. No time was on travel, maybe. More time for listen. And online learning also give good opportunity to draw attention away from the pandemic. We have more time to pay attention with our health. We consume healthy food, we do some exercise, and our time is free. There are better means of organizing subject matter. That means good opportunity to be more organized. Faster and more productive information transfer, maybe through Google Classroom and some media technology, we can organize material well. A good opportunity to adapt the use of technology in the learning process. We know we have Zoom meeting, we have WebEx, and etc. A good opportunity to technological integration. This is the positive side of online learning. And in the other side, we have negative one. Factor of the negative aspect of online learning, I divide into four. Distraction by family members, decreased level of motivation to engage, overload with assignment and awareness, and procrastination in the learning process. So we will back to my previous presentation about basic learning need and how this is come to online learning. Okay, for the basic learning need of competence, online learning could help learner achieving learning goal by offering efficient and convenient ways to learn at their own pace. So student, learner can meet this basic learning need, competence. Online learning also enhancing academic attainment and developing higher order thinking through self-regulated learning, while integrative learning can increase content knowledge as well as enhance cognitive processing. Therefore, students will also to become more autonomous. And the second, the online learning met student learning need of autonomy and competence. That is, online learning was effective in developing learner autonomy and their sense of competence. But however, the lack of immediate feedback and supervision from teacher could be a downside of online learning, hence not meeting the learning need of arousal. Disadvantages of online learning include learner feeling of isolation and the lack of solidarity with peers. It was due to the learners craving for connection. However, online learning could in fact develop collaboration and interaction outside of the structured educational setting because online learning environment create interaction through maybe virtual classroom, online discussion, and social networking. But this is not real. So not really fulfill the need of relatedness. Every student need to relate one another. However, the need of relatedness and arousal were not met when learning was online, which has no social and physical interaction with teacher and peers in an actual school setting. So from this explanation, we can say that the basic learning need of students through online learning were only partially met. Online learning is best known for its benefit of developing student autonomy, self-regulated learning, self-directed, and the need of oriented learning, but not in the relatedness and arousal. So from that analysis, we can conclude the very common problems in online learning that affect students' psychological state. I think this is happen in both Indonesia or Filipina and some other country, that there are some common problems. First, the lack of specific learning skill, time management, concentration, learning method, and motivation to study. And second is workloads, the fear of academic failure, relationship with teacher, and the education system, but class size, mode of performance assessment, long school hour, and heavy syllabus. So from that description, this is the core of my presentation, how student psychological dynamic during pandemic was happen. The common problem that I said before will increase the stress level. And here are some psychological triggers factor that two students distress during pandemic COVID-19. For the first, factor related to their families, such as domestic violence, financial problem, family relationship factor, and other factor in the families have been identified as having an impact on student stress level, include financial problems, family and contextual expectation placed upon students, factor related to their families such as domestic violence and other difficulties that encounter in their family relationship. Family related factor and the poor experience of returning home owing to unpleasant family environment. The stability of family income was also a significant factor in student experience anxiety during the COVID-19 crisis, which could be explained by increased psychological and economic pressure. The second psychological trigger is environmental changes. The effect of physical distancing can affect student functioning, academic performance, and well-being. As I said before, we all need to relate one another. And if when social distancing become the demand of what we can do, so we can connect one another. The second is difficulties in managing academic and personal life. Stress is present among all students because of their workloads. Anxiety and stress interact with student learning and time management skill. So the psychological distress is predicted by the perceived stress, which is more likely to interact with learning skill, because academic anxiety will not support the study, learning and teaching. So it come to make student procrastination too. And the fourth psychological trigger factor is the lack of emotional support and communication. The mental health of young people, level of anxiety and stress, and their academic performance are affected by the lack of emotional support and communication that come from the teacher or lecturer. Anxiety disorder are more likely to occur and worse in the absence of interpersonal communication. Although we all know that we can make virtual communication, but this is not real. So from the description of student psychological dynamic during pandemic and what triggered that psychological distress, we have to think about how to cope with this psychological distress. Okay, I think this is the impact I have said before. And this is how we coping with psychological effect of pandemic. Okay, we will analyze from the student need and what school and university can do. First, we will see from the student need. There are two important things that students need for this pandemic situation. First, they need emotional and social support. And the second, they need self-understanding about factor affecting academic performance and interest to education. It means that students need self-awareness about what make or what affect their performance and interest to education, because it's unique for each student. And emotional and social support not only reduce the psychological pressure in academic, but also changes the attitude regarding social support and help-seeking method. And now we will see from the school and university. School and university can support student psychological distress by three important things. I say this here. Pay attention to student situation and context, emotional and mental health support, and flexibility in teaching process. There are three main aspects. School and university have to take into account the fact that students are faced with various social, emotional, physical, and family problems during this pandemic. So this understanding leads some effort that providing emotional and mental health support with increased communication and enhanced cooperation with students. They also have to make some real support in academic area by adapting teaching to suit student need and flexible to engage with teaching and learning process. In my opinion, healthy is number one. So we have to pay attention to the student situation and context before we deliver our teaching material. This is from school and university. And what can students do by themselves? In addition to what school and university can do to help students have more psychological well-being, students can help themselves by two important things. They are self-awareness and cognitive modification. Self-awareness related to knowing well about themselves, their strength and weakness, what is the most important thing in their life, so that they become knowing about appropriate service that supporting their mental health. And the number two is cognition modification that related to the change the negative mind and emotion to more positive one. This cognitive modification then can reduce negative emotion and our attitude will be more positive. It's very helpful for increasing our education psychological well-being. So finally, we never know when this pandemic will end, and we never know what the next crisis in our life. So in educational setting, we have to make some prevention to manage the crisis. Here are some preparation that school and university can do to manage the life crisis. One, school and university have to transcend traditional approach in an innovative and proactive manner. They have to be ready to adapt to the changes, set up facilities that can respond successfully to student needs during a crisis, creating plans for crisis management, keep students safe both during and after the crisis, and focus on improving online learning to integrate technology into the teaching environment. This is some step that university and school can do to adapt to manage the crisis that we never know will when it will end, and maybe we will have some next crisis. We not hope so, but we have to anticipate it with all condition. So this is my conclusion. For the first, COVID-19 outbreak is uncertain situation that have impact on individual mental health. Since the changes offline to online learning to basic learning needs that were not met are relatedness and arousal. We have to aware about these two learning needs that we are not met. And there are four triggers factors that contribute to student distress during pandemic, including family situation, environmental setting, academic skill, and social support and communication. For student distress affect degree of attention and focus to the studies that decline motivation and academic performance. University and school could help reduce student psychological distress by providing emotional support. School and university should be ready to every possibilities changes to manage all of crises in the future. So that's all of my presentation today. Thank you very much for the kind of attention. And I return the time to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ibu Titik, for your presentation. And again, we would like to say thank you very much to all the speakers that we had from Dr. Lily Nurlaili to Miss Jonah Carla Bien, to Dr. Ipa Saripa, to Dr. Sally Jarin, and also to Dr. Titi Cristianti. Thank you so much for sharing us the ideas and also knowledge about this psychological effect during this pandemic COVID-19. And now we will open the time for the question and answer. We have here some questions, and please allow me to read this question. First, we have this question addressed to Miss Jonah from Miss Maria Angelica Eugenio. There are a lot of typical reactions to the effects of this pandemic, like psychological stress. How can we, as professors or instructors, can help to make sure that online learning will be a success considering a lot of factors that needs to be addressed? Thank you.
Hello, Miss Manette.
Yes, pa.
Okay. So for the question of how are we going to ensure that the online teaching would be successful, I would be suggesting some of these tips. First, as teachers or as lecturers, we could be first setting a major goal on what do we want to carry out to implement our teaching mechanism. While we are doing the online learning, we clearly give what our objectives, what our goals, what would be the activities for the rest of the semester, and for each of the day, we have to identify to our students what should be doing and what should be carried out for that particular day or the activities. And then it is also important for us to make a study plan so that ahead of time we could check and we could keep ourselves in track if we are following what we have planned before, if we are in the right pace, if we are doing and finishing the lessons discussed at the right timing that we have allotted. And I would also suggest that we have to make our places a conducive one for learning. Like, for example, when we are having classes, though we are at home or our students are at home, better that we highly suggest them that the environment should be a conducive one, free of some noises, free of some environmental distractions. At the same time, we have to set ourselves as an example to our students. Like, for example, like we said that we are going to have a class at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe we could get in earlier and ahead of time so that the students will see that as 3 o'clock comes, then the teacher is already there. At the same time, we could ensure that online learning would be possible if we will be creative in doing lessons. Like, for example, since they use the social media, why not we incorporate the social media? We could make a Facebook group and post our lectures there, post pictures related to our lessons and ask them to have some reactions or have some feedbacks, what they do observe. At the same time, make use of some of the online activities, online exercises, which would supplement the activities that we could have for our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carla. And now we have these follow-up questions. Since the online method needs more effort to deliver learning materials, what type of communication we can use as feedback from Ms. Dia Ayupus Pandari?
Okay, so this is really challenging for us to have the online lesson. Since we have the synchronous and asynchronous mode, we could check on what kind of questions or what kind of activities that we ask our students to submit in which we have to give an immediate feedback or response. Like, for example, we are using the Zoom platform and we ask a question. We are having a recitation. The student answered upon giving your question, and right after that, you could give a feedback for the student's answers or the query of the student. That's immediate. That's for the synchronous. However, not all the time we are online and not all the time we tend to meet our students. So we could make use of the asynchronous mode. Like, for example, you gave an essay homework to your student. You told them to set or give how do they feel about a certain situation. And they answered back through the essay. They replied to you with the paragraphs that they have sent containing their thoughts and their ideas. As you read on with them, don't just give a score. As much as possible, you read them to understand what your student had told you, especially if it has something to do with some psychological issues or the feelings or conditions of your student. Because with that, you might be getting a hint if the student is suffering or being challenged by some disturbances. And as you read them, then give your feedback, you send it to the student, or if you have a group, you could send, I have already given responses to the essays that you have submitted. And so the student could read and see what are your feedbacks. It could be done through email, it could be done through your group chat, or whatever platform you are using for your online teaching. Just a reminder, make sure that the platform that you are using is something you are comfortable with.
Thank you so much, Miss Carla.
Thank you, ma'am.
And now we have here a question addressed to Dr. Ipa Saripa from Miss Dia Ayupus Pandari. How can we measure that the learning process and assignments are not overwhelming?
Okay, thank you very much for the good question from Ms. Dia Ayupus Pandari. And I think my answer also seems to be able to answer the question from Ms. Maria Angelica Eugenio, complementing the answer from Prof. Jona Carla. So the question are, how can we measure that the learning process and assignments do not overwhelming the students? And how can we as instructor help to make sure that online learning will be success? I try to answer this question based on the principle of do's and don'ts. So do are things that should be done. The first one, provide a clear explanation of the material to be taught and evaluated. And the second one, design learning material or tasks or activities that can include 2 or 3 lessons at a time. And the third one, give assignments related to students' daily activities at home and also make use objects in their immediate environment. And the fourth one is provide some dialogue space or open question on assignment instruction that help students to express their opinions. That the things that should be done, and the don't are things that should be avoided. First one, avoid making rules and assignment that do not understand the condition of the students and their parents. And the second one, avoid forcing assignment to be done with the same criteria and duration of speed for all students. The third one, avoid demanding parents to accompany students fully without considering the circumstance in providing assistance. And the fourth one, avoid assigning tasks that only work on worksheet or just copying some material. So I think that's the answer for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ipa Saripa, for answering the question. So there should be something we can say, there should be consideration from the teachers in order to have this learning process success and also the submission of assignments.
Exactly.
And now we have another question. This one is from Ms. Dia again, addressed to Dr. Sally. In which purpose the material could be delivered in an animation video, PowerPoint, or other methods? How to the learning process by combining synchronous and asynchronous way?
Okay. Hello, Dia Ayu. Thank you for the question.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ali, your voice is not that clear. Maybe you can louder, ma'am, or the volume, I guess. And now it's like.
Okay, come on. Is it okay?
Lisa.
Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for the question, recent presentations are more eye-catching. Therefore, you can easily get the attention of your students. Knowing that the national government in the Philippines prohibits face-to-face mode of learning face-to-face mode of learning, our university will employ learning management systems and system portals, which provides options to students whether to make use of modules, online videos, and cloud meetings like the individual learning plan to assure that all activities needed is included. Evaluation mechanisms are also put into place to ensure that the necessary learning will still be provided to students. Did I answer you, Ma'am Suinarni?
Yes, Miss. Thank you very much.
Is it okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you
I
so
guess I have a question.
Yeah, we have another question here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miss Sally.
How about, ma'am, that question from Miss Dia Ayupus Pandari? How to balance learning process by combining synchronous and asynchronous way?
Okay, so the next one is all about tips how to develop teaching online effectively, right? Yes. So online learning is a part of the blended and flexible learning is the key mode today. Okay. So we have to know the interest of our students as well as the mode of learning available to them. Do they have internet or are they only using cell phones? Do they have no apps, no application at all? So we can give them some modules, okay? And you need to consider motivating the students online. Let them be very participative to activities such as games, videos, and cloud-based meetings. Also be conscious of their attention span in order for them not to be bored. That is the most important thing. You have to catch their attention. You have to motivate them so that they will be concentrating and participating in the class. Is that okay?
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Saki. And now we have another question from Mr. Wilmer Benito addressed to Professor Jonah Bien. In your opinion, which one is more convenient now to lessen, if not avoid stress, having a work from home or having a work in the workplace, and why?
Okay. Since we are always set before in having work in the workplace, I think we could not really say that that is more appropriate considering the situation nowadays. This working from home, the setup right now, is an alternative in order to address the current situation that we have, since it is very much encouraged to everyone that we have to stay at home in order to prevent the infection or the transmission of infection. We are encouraged to stay at home. So even though we are staying at home, I think we have to maximize not only our resources but ourselves. We have to be adjusted in the situation that we are facing so that we could still do our job at its best. And if you're going to ask me which is more appropriate, I think both could be having their advantages, both of be having their disadvantages. It just depends now on us. How are we going to make a good learnings and good knowledge and good applications of the things that we are facing? So the best thing that we would be doing is that even though we are working from home, we have to maintain a balance of ourselves, a balance of work and life, not only work and work, not only relaxation, but a combination of that to make our teachings more effective, because we have to be in our good condition for us to be more functional at the same time. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Miss Jana Carla. And now we have another question here addressed to Dr. Titi Cristiani, I'm so sorry. How to maintain the binding between the lecturer and the student in a big virtual classroom?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think we all have known that bonding is very important to make our students get engaged and motivated to study. And bonding in education is not always between teacher and student, but also between all of the class member. So bonding can create between student and student. And sometimes the student-student interaction can be more productive, more informal, so that they can feel comfortable compare with teacher and student interaction. But teacher and student interaction, of course, important too. And the first, what we can do to create the bonding between teacher and student, we can create the virtual community. In the situation of pandemic, we can create the virtual community, like I think we all are familiar with WhatsApp group. This is simple thing that we can do without take too much quota. I have to say that we have to remember that we have various student condition in. I said before that we have maybe our student have problem in financial quota in Indonesia student. I think it's very important problem enough. So we have to create this as simple as virtual community. And the key to maintain the bonding between lecturer and student, I think the key is consistent and personally. We can start from the daily life, not have to always talk about academic, because it will not make student engaged. Student will be touched when they ask about the daily living. So this is the fourth. Consistent. Maybe we have just a few minutes to pay attention with our student, but this is consistent. We have to aware that technology never displays the real connectedness, but we can maximize it with the consistently. So this is what I highlight is consistent and start from the daily living, not the academic area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Titik. To our participants, if you have any more questions, please kindly type it in the Q&A. Or for those who are in the panelists now, you may raise a hand and you can ask directly your question. Okay, in our chat box, we have some question here. Again, we would like to encourage our participants. If you have any question, please type it in the Q&A so it can be easily seen by us. So we have here a question from Miss Noor and Janintias addressed to Dr. Titik. What criteria can be applied to pre-assess the condition of the students before designing the lessons? I'm sorry, Ibu, you're still mute. Ibu Titik, maaf Ibu, masih dalam mute. Ibu.
I'm sorry. Okay, I will repeat. Pre-assess condition. Okay, we can, in beginning at the class, we have to know about the situation context of all of our students by make what I usually do is I have some survey questionnaire about their identity, their need, their problem, what make them happy, what make them sad, and what their perception about the class. So if I have described the condition of class, I can design what they need, what they don't need. Maybe what I planned before, I have structured lesson, but they not need. So I skip it. So I think survey, or we can self-report questionnaire, we can spread from student, and we know the condition real from them, not from the teacher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu. And now we have here another question from Miss Jess Zamora. And I guess any of the speakers may answer this. Knowing the possible psychological effects of pandemic to the students and teachers affecting both of them in learning and teaching process. First, what possible adjustments the teachers or lecturers should make so as not to stress more the students? And second, what are your recommendations to the administrators to lessen the stresses of the faculty? Who would like to answer this first from our panelists?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, yes, for Miss Jonah.
I
Yes.
think I could be sharing some answers here.
Yes, yes.
For what could we do in order to lessen the
Hello?
stress?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Who is talking?
Hello?
Yes, yes, Miss Jonah.
Yes. What I
Oh, can you
think
hear me?
here for the students and the teachers, first to make them feel less stress, first of all, both of them should be feel more valued. How do they feel? How would they be able to feel that they are valued? One thing is we could do appreciation. We know that some of the tasks could be so challenging and could be difficult for them, but just making or just by saying some good compliments like your work is nice, it is really a good contributing thing to the progress of this department or whatsoever, by saying kind words, that one thing could lighten the stress that they are carrying. Another, I think it could be good if they will be given some considerations. In the case of the students, we couldn't be like what we were used to be in the classroom into which we are having face to face. We tend sometimes to lose control of our temper, wherein if the students are too noisy and if they have a delay in submission of their assignment, sometimes we tend to say some things that might be hurting them. On this to set up the online lectures, we could set our deadlines. However, we should also keep in mind that it's not all the time that our students could be able to submit it. Some reasons could be they lack the connection during that time. That's why they were not able to join, or that's why they were not able able to submit it, maybe we could be more considerate on this issue. But of course, you still have to set some restrictions. Another, it's important that a feedback will be given both ways, both to the students and both to the teachers, because a good and open communication during this time is also highly important. That's what I think, which could lessen the stress or the burdens, although we know there are a lot of burdens and there are uncontrollable factors that we are facing. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jonah Carla. Yes, Dr. Sally, do you want to add some answers po?
Yes. For us in the university, they try to consider the needs of the faculty, and they have to help us in dealing with the pandemic. They go for our safety, from home to our university. They try to consider a lot of our well-being. They try to consider also our needs and problems. They provide a shuttle bus so that we will not be commuting for those who doesn't have a car. And also, they try to help our faculty to express themselves. Remember, I posted the 3 Ps, and they let us uh, they let us try to have these 3 Ps wherein we try to assess ourselves if we are ready to face this pandemic, if we are ready to have the online, if we are ready to meet all these students face to face or the online class. And also, they try to help us meditate. Meditation is very important for our well-being. It's really prayers, and that is really very important.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sally. From our other speakers, do you want to add some answers?
Okay, try, Ms. Manet.
Yes, Dr. Ipa.
Yeah, basically I do agree with Ms. Junakala and also Dr. Sally's statement. And as I have stated in my presentation earlier, adjustment is inevitable during this pandemic. And so the most likely adjustment of a teacher or lecturer is the adjustment from or of themselves. So please, by no longer thinking only for his own sake, but also considering some factors that may be difficult for students, and be aware for the weaknesses that may be experienced by our students. Also keep providing positive feedbacks for our students, and always keep ourselves from giving assignment that will burden or overwhelming to our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ipa.
Yes.
Okay, we have here another question from Miss Maria Elizabeth Cagas. I guess Miss Maria Elizabeth is curious about some of application, and maybe from our speakers you may share some. Aside from Mentimeter, what can we use for the evaluation of the students?
It depends, I think. It depends on if you want it synchronous or asynchronous. Because if it's synchronous, we have the Menti, we have the quiz maker. However, if it's asynchronous, we could make use of the Google Meet, our Schoology, and I could be sharing here a link for some exercises or activities which you would like to carry out. You just check it on later. This is about the activities for depression which you could adjust or which you could devise. So I'll share the link in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Jana. From our other speakers, would you like to add some answer? Okay, if none, here's the last question from Miss Sheridan Manamtam, addressed to what special activity would you suggest for the first day of classes?
Okay. With regards to the first class, you have to know your students very well. Give them activity telling something about themselves. So you should conduct group dynamics wherein you should know your students from within so that they will feel comfortable by the time they will be having the online class. Remember, first impression is lasting. So you must be very friendly online. You must have that smiling face. You must deal with them closely as if there's no barrier that they are in their home. No, it's just like a face-to-face that you are teaching. You have to move and don't just be like this. So if you are having a class, you move your hands. It's just like the way you are teaching. And if you are asking them to submit an assignment, make sure as a teacher, you are going to check it and give also your feedback. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sally. And now I guess we don't have any more questions. So again, allow me to thank you so much to all the participants and also the speakers for today's webinar. Thank you so much. We learned a lot of things about this during this webinar. And now, before we end this webinar, let us hear some message from the Education and Culture Attaché, Dr. Lily Nurlaili.
Thank you, Mbak Manet. Terima kasih, Mbak Manet. Thanks all panelists and all speaker. Dr. Sali Asajarin from University of Pangasinan, the Professor Jona Carlabin from Polytechnic University of Philippines, Dr. Titi Kristiani from University of Sanata Dharma, and Dr. Ipah Saripah from University Pendidikan Bandung. And then thanks for all participants until now is around 200. And this webinar international is already finished now. And then I just give information. I have a next webinar Monday that is about urban agriculture. Today is about psychology, but Monday is about agriculture. And the same, the speaker, two professor from Philippines and two professor from Indonesia. The theme is urban agriculture, empowering all to grow food. Okay, thank you very much. And then I hope this webinar about psychology is very useful for the Indonesia teacher or all participants from Indonesia and all participants from Philippines. And all the material, PowerPoint and certificate is already there. And then I hope you are can implementation what the speaker talk about the aspect psychology for teacher, lecture, and then teacher and lecture and student. Thank you very much. Terima kasih Mbak Manet. Dengan mengucapkan Alhamdulillah, saya tutup webinar internasional hari ini. Dan ini adalah hari terakhir di bulan Juli. Setelah 1 bulan full kita melakukan webinar setiap hari dengan berbagai aspek dan dengan berbagai kalangan dari berbagai universitas yang ada di Indonesia dan di Filipina. This webinar international is collaboration between Indonesian University and then Philippine University. The speaker is already make agreement or MOU between Indonesia and Philippines. And some of the university is already coming coming to Philippines and then make MOU. Terima kasih. Maraming salamat. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you
Terima
very much,
kasih.
Ibu
Thank
Lily.
you, Bu Lily, and all of the speakers.
Thank you. It's nice to
So
see
much
you all.
our
Thank you,
webinar.
Miss Manet.
It was interesting and useful.
Thank you so much. See you again.